Welcome to DEMOCREPUBLIX, where we cover the real news that matters to we the people. Ghislaine Maxwell was caught in New Hampshire. Jeffrey Epstein's partner in crime is now in U.S. custody in the darkest of all places, the Southern District of New York. The first thing on everyone's mind should be, which faction actually has her, and how long will she survive? We can't answer those questions, but it doesn't hurt to run out a few scenarios, all of which, at this point, are pure speculation. When Epstein was arrested, the same questions hung in the air. Was this the deep state getting a hold of him to shut him up? Was this Donald Trump trying to tie up a loose end? Or was Trump and new Attorney General William Barr putting operational tempo on their opponents, forcing Epstein into a potentially explosive situation? The raid on Epstein's home was conducted under the auspice of an indictment filed in the SDNY, a place where the worst crimes in the world go unpunished. Trump and Barr took another shot at getting someone less controlled by the deep state in charge of the SDNY, and it looks like, for now, that they missed the mark. With Berman gone, but in such a way as to allow his hand-picked assistant, Audrey Strauss, to take over, rather than anyone picked by Barr and Trump, this arrest seems way out of place. Now, Strauss, a woman who prosecuted legendary mobster and one of Trump's mentors, Roy Cohn, has to be considered suspect. Because the furor over Berman's removal died down immediately after she was put in place. And she's in charge of the fate of the most important person in the world at the moment, Ghislaine Maxwell. Because Maxwell knows everything. If Epstein was the CEO of their international blackmail operation, Maxwell was the COO, in charge of the day-to-day operations. Strauss's indictment dog and pony show announcing Maxwell's arrest focused on all the salacious bits pertaining to the indictment, which only covers the period from 1995 to 1997. It neatly avoided any of the real implications of Maxwell's apprehension, the systematic entrapment and blackmailing of major political and economic figures the world over. L'affaire Epstein is the big one, with the potential to uncover decades of endemic corruption that is truly global in nature. So, while we all joke about the Clinton body count, the truth is that there were plenty of people who wanted him dead. And those same people today want Ghislaine Maxwell dead. The problem, of course, with analyzing the situation is that all theories about who those people might be are entirely reasonable. Logic dictates that Trump is not one of those people, despite the pictures and the old Society page quotes from Trump linking him to Epstein. And we know this simply because after Epstein died in prison, he disappeared from the news cycle. If there was any real truth to Trump's deeper involvement with Epstein, that information would have already come out, and Trump would no longer be president. The man who led the raid on Epstein's home was Jeffrey Berman. The man slow-rolling the investigation into Epstein. Berman. The guy William Barr fired for not actively pursuing DOJ priorities pertaining to Epstein and Joe Biden, while pursuing frivolous complaints about Donald Trump. Berman. The guy who refused to resign to force Trump to fire him and block a recess appointment to his job at the SDNY. Berman. And the histrionic surrounding Barr's removing Berman died down the minute his hand-picked, plucked from retirement assistant was given the job. Forgive me for not feeling comfortable with Maxwell's future relationship with Oxygen. If anything, what's happening here is that Trump and Barr keep pushing the tempo against the people who are trying to remove him from office by any means necessary. Maxwell's arrest could be a dare to them to kill her too, to protect themselves, again. It's also, in my opinion, a signal that Trump isn't going down without a fight, and that he may be at the point where he's willing to burn the entire rotten edifice down on his way out the door. Because at this point it should be clear to everyone that if Trump loses this November, he and his family will be hounded into oblivion. Anything he's accomplished as president, some of which is very good, in trying to reform and remake the judiciary and federal agencies, will be undone within days of his leaving office. Trump has nothing left to lose at this point. So, why not pull the trigger on arresting Maxwell, forcing the SDNY's hand, and try to force out into the open the evidence Berman sat on in relation to Epstein? With each and every move Trump makes, there is a series of firewalls and roadblocks erected to thwart any real movement on the endemic corruption. And the frustrating part is not being able to truly parse who has the upper hand in all of this. At a minimum, ending the Epstein-Maxwell blackmail operation is a good thing. Exposing even some of their dealings to scrutiny and forcing some conversation about them is also an unmitigated good thing. Whether this can all be turned on its head to burn Donald Trump is, frankly, irrelevant. Because at this point there is now a large enough group of people reporting on the various parts of this story that it won't simply go gently into that good night. The most troubling thing about this story is that Maxwell was found in New Hampshire, removing herself from French protection. Patrick Henningsen at 21st Century Wire traces down some of the threads linking Maxwell to Prince Andrew, who refuses to cooperate with the FBI. The answer to that question may very well have something to do with her friend Prince Andrew, who has been in a 6-month standoff with the FBI, who have wanted to interview him over his relations with Epstein and to answer to victims' accusations of underage sexual abuse. Could Maxwell have been summoned by the powers that be in order to provide a buffer against any further overtures by authorities towards the British royal family? And why would she do this? Because, 1. She's the daughter of Robert Maxwell, a British media tycoon with close ties and connections to British intelligence. And 2. She considers Prince Andrew a close friend who, according to a November report from The Telegraph, would corroborate Andrew's denial he ever had sex with an underage girl. Tracing another British connection, given that Chief Cabinet Secretary and National Security Director Sir Mark Sedwill was fired by Boris Johnson just before the Brexit extension deadline passed this week, could this be a counter to Sedwill's removal, given his deep ties to British intelligence and his staunch opposition to Brexit? If so, then Maxwell giving herself up serves a few of Trump's purposes. Remember that I believe the meeting between Trump and Queen Elizabeth last year, which was fought virulently by the Remain crowd at the time, created a new alliance between Trump, Johnson and the Queen to rescue the UK from the hands of globalists like Sedwill, Theresa May and Tony Blair. So, this attempt by Berman and Strauss to make the Epstein case all about Prince Andrew's involvement is to destroy what's left of the British royal family and undermine the UK government at a time when the odds of a no-deal Brexit are rising significantly. This would track, then, with the timeline of Barr firing Berman to protect the crown, while Trump has been on the warpath against Germany, and the EU is deep into its next stage of evolution, ramming debt mutualization and fiscal integration, consolidated under the ECB and the European Commission. It's murky, convoluted and probably wrong, but since Maxwell Epstein's operations were designed from the ground up to procure this exact type of leverage, it has to be considered. Ultimately, the crimes here are monstrous. Getting to the truth of them is only scratching the surface of this story, which goes much deeper. Maxwell's life story is one that forces more people to come face to face with the kind of corruption that we hate to admit to ourselves about our governments and leadership. But we must admit these crimes or ourselves be complicit in them. The saddest part of this whole thing is the lengths our media will go to as paid whitewashers of the truth in order to continue enjoying their proximity to power. We'll find out soon why Maxwell effectively turned herself in and to whom. But I doubt someone of her capabilities and connections did so to willingly put her head in the hangman's noose. Let us know what you think. Leave your comments down below. Like, share and subscribe. And check out DEMOCREPUBLIX.com for the latest in news. Until next time.
We live in a winning nightmare. We live in a winning nightmare.